Every window on the ground floor had a handprint on it, and every single one was on the inside of the glass, pressed there from within my locked, empty house. I stood in my own living room, counting them, and I understood that whoever had left them hadn't been looking in at me. They'd been looking out, waiting for me to come home. Welcome back. It's just you and me and the dark tonight. 3 true stories about the feeling of being watched from outside your own window, and the far worse moment of learning the watcher was never outside at all. Let's begin. I noticed the first handprint on a Tuesday. I'd come home from work, dropped my bag, and as I passed the big living room window, the low sun caught the glass at an angle and I saw it. A handprint, right in the middle of the pane at about head height. A full palm and 5 fingers smudged into the glass. And my first thought was totally ordinary. A bird, a smudge, one of my own hands some morning. But when I looked closer, I felt the skin on my arms go tight, because the handprint was on the inside of the window. The oils, the smear, all of it on the inside surface, facing out. And I hadn't touched that window. I keep a clean house. I'd have known. I wiped it off and told myself it was nothing. But over the next few days, I started finding them everywhere. On the kitchen window, over the sink, on the sliding door to the backyard, on the little window in the downstairs bathroom, on the dining room windows. Every window on the ground floor of my house, one by one, got a handprint, and every one of them was on the inside, pressed against the glass from within the house, always at about head height, always a full, flat hand, fingers spread, the way you'd press your hand to a window if you were standing right up against it, looking out. I lived alone. My doors were locked. My windows were locked, and someone was standing at each of them on my side of the glass and pressing their hand to it and looking out at the street, at the yard, at the world. From inside my house, I did everything you're supposed to do. I changed the locks. I checked every window latch. I looked in every closet, under every bed, in the attic, in the crawl space, with a flashlight and a knife and my heart in my throat. There was no one. The house was empty. And still, every day, I'd come home to find fresh handprints on the inside of the glass, in a house I had left locked and empty that morning. The thing that broke me was the height, because I started really looking at the prints and they weren't at my height. They were higher, a few inches above where my own hand reached when I pressed it to the glass to compare. Whoever was leaving them was taller than me, and they were standing at my windows, in my locked house, while I was gone, with their hand and their face to the glass, watching the outside. Watching, I finally understood, for me. Watching the driveway, waiting to see my car come back. I started parking down the street and walking back on foot, so my headlights wouldn't announce me, so I could come up on my own house quietly and maybe, for once, catch it at the glass before it stepped away. It never worked. Every single time. By the time I could see my own windows, the hand was already gone, and there was only the fresh print, cooling on the inside of the glass, at that height just above where mine could reach. It knew the sound of my car from streets away. It knew my footsteps on the walk. It always had the time to step back into wherever it went. And I finally understood that the whole arrangement was on its terms, not mine. That I would only ever see exactly what it wanted me to see, which was proof that it was there in my house every single day. and never once the thing itself. I set up a camera in the living room, pointed at the big window before I left for work one morning. And when I checked it that night, I made myself watch the whole day sped up. Nothing for hours. My empty living room, sun crossing the floor. And then in the middle of the afternoon, in my locked and empty house, the light in the room changed, dimmed, like a cloud, except it was a clear day. And a shadow fell across the window from the inside, and something moved into frame, tall, indistinct, wrong, and raised a hand and pressed it flat to the glass, and stood there at my window, looking out at my empty driveway for a long, long time, waiting for me. And then, a few minutes before my car actually pulled in that evening, it lowered its hand and stepped back out of frame and was gone. It had known I was coming home before I got there. It had been watching for me, and it always stepped away, back into wherever it went, just before I walked in, so that I'd only ever find the handprints and never the hand. I moved, but I still check my windows in every place I've lived since from the inside to see which way the prints are facing, because I learned that the scariest handprint on a window isn't the one facing in, it's the one that's facing you from your own side of the glass. A handprint, at least, stays exactly where it's pressed. The next woman's winter was haunted by something that never did. A pale face at her windows that only ever showed itself in the one pane she happened not to be watching. It started with a feeling the way these things do. The sense when she was home alone at night of being watched through the dark glass. She'd be sitting in her living room, curtains open to the night, and she'd feel eyes on her, and she'd snap her head toward the window, and there'd be nothing, just her own reflection and the dark yard beyond. She'd tell herself she was being paranoid, and then she'd feel it again from a different direction, and turn, and again, nothing. But once, turning quickly, she caught it. In the far window, the one across the room, the one she'd just looked away from. A pale face, low, near the bottom of the glass, as if someone were crouched outside looking up into the room. She only saw it for a fraction of a second before it was gone. The instant her eyes landed on it, it dropped away below the sill. And when she ran to that window and looked out, the yard was empty. That became the pattern all winter long. The face was never in the window she was looking at. It was always in the one she wasn't. She'd be watching the front window, certain, waiting, and feel it behind her, and spin, and catch just a glimpse of it in the back window before it dropped away. It was fast, faster than a person should be, and it seemed to know, always, exactly where she was looking so that it could be everywhere she wasn't. She started to feel like it was playing with her, like the whole thing was a game and she was losing, and she didn't even know the rules. She got so she couldn't stand it. She'd sit in the middle of her living room, turning, trying to catch it, and it would flicker at the edges of every window, a pale smear always just gone by the time she looked. She stopped opening her curtains, and that helped for a while. If she couldn't see the windows, she couldn't lose the game. But drawing the curtains only changed the game instead of ending it, because now, with the glass covered, she couldn't check the windows at all. And the not knowing was its own slow torture. She'd sit in the middle of the room and feel it out there, moving from window to window in the dark, pressing its wrong, pale face to the fabric she'd hung between them. And she had no way to look, no way to catch it, no way to be sure of anything except the certainty in her own skin that it was there, circling, patient, waiting for the one night she got careless and left a curtain open a crack, which, of course, over a long winter she eventually did. But one night, she forgot to close the curtains in the kitchen, and she walked in for a glass of water, and there it was. And this time it didn't drop away. This time it stayed. A pale, wet, wrong face, low in the corner of the kitchen window, looking up at her, holding her gaze, and she froze, and it held her there. And for the first time all winter, she got a real, long look at it. And she said the thing that undid her wasn't how frightening it was. It was that it was smiling. Because the game was over. She'd finally looked right at it, and it hadn't run. It didn't have to run anymore. She left that night and stayed gone. And she told me she still can't sit in a room with a dark window without that old reflex. The need to keep turning, to keep checking the one behind her. Because for one whole winter, something taught her that the danger is never in the window you're watching. It's always, always in the one at your back. That lesson came through glass. The last one tonight comes through soil. Bare footprints pressed into a flower bed, circling close enough to every window to have been listening the whole time. A family had flower beds running along the front and sides of their house. Soft, turned soil under the windows, the kind that takes a print like fresh snow. And one morning the mother went out to water them and found footprints in the dirt, bare footprints, right up against the front of the house under the living room window. Someone had been standing in the flower bed close to the glass in the night. She was unsettled but not yet frightened. A prowler, a drunk, a one-time thing. They put up a light, but the prints came back, and she started following them, each morning walking the perimeter of her own house, reading the story the dirt told. The bare feet had come out of the tree line at the back of the property. They'd crossed the lawn, and then they had walked the flower beds all the way around the house, under every window, one after another, pausing at each. She could see where the feet had stopped and turned to face the glass at every single window, all the way around. Someone had walked a slow circle around her sleeping family, in their bare feet, in the dark, stopping to look in at every window of the house. And every morning, the circle was fresh again. Out of the trees, around the house, window by window, they called the police, put up cameras, put up motion lights. The cameras caught nothing. The prints appeared on nights the cameras somehow glitched or pointed the wrong way, or simply showed an empty flower bed in the evening and fresh prints by dawn with nothing in between. The lights came on for no one. But the circle kept coming, night after night, patient, complete. She started to dread the mornings more than the nights, because at night she could at least pretend she was asleep, that it wasn't happening, that the house was only a house. But the mornings made her read it. Every dawn she walked the perimeter and let the dirt tell her, in bare footprints, exactly how her family had been circled while they slept, where the feet had stopped, where they had stood the longest. And it was always under the children's windows that they stood longest, she noticed. The prints there, the deepest and most trampled, as though it lingered at those two windows more than any of the others. She stopped sleeping after that. She'd sit up all night at the top of the stairs, listening with everything she had, and still, somehow, by morning, the circle would be there, fresh, complete. And she would never once have heard a single sound, Until the morning, it wasn't complete. The mother went out to walk the perimeter like she did now, dread in her stomach, and she followed the bare prints out of the trees across the lawn into the flower bed, around the front, under the living room window where they stopped and faced the glass, along the side under the dining room, stopping, facing in, around to the back, under the kitchen window. And then the prince turned away from the wall and walked out of the flower bed toward the back door and stopped at the back door, which was standing very slightly open. The circle was broken because the circling was over. Whatever had spent all those nights walking around the outside of the house, looking in at every window, had finally stopped looking and gone to a door, and the prince did not come back out. They searched the house top to bottom. They found no one, but they never found where the prince went either, because bare wet feet on hardwood don't last. And by the time she'd run inside screaming for her husband, whatever had come in from the flower bed was already somewhere in the house with them, and there was no trail left to say where. They moved within the month, and the mother told me she never again lived in a house with soft dirt under the windows. She keeps gravel now, because she learned that the footprints outside your window are terrible, yes, but they are not the ones you have to be afraid of. The ones you have to be afraid of are the ones that stop. That's all for tonight. If this one's got you thinking about the windows around you right now, then do the thing that keeps these stories coming. Subscribe and hit that bell, because there's a new true horror story here every single night, and you won't want to miss one. Give it a like so it finds the next person in the dark, and share it with someone who leaves their curtains open at night. I'll be right here tomorrow night when the lights go down. Sleep well, if you can.
Like, share, and subscribe for daily horror stories every single day.